Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Can you hear me? It's too low? Good morning again. I want to begin the morning with the morning of September 4th, 2022, when all of the families were at Ocean Reef, gathered to celebrate the birthday of Mr. Pino's daughter. There were several families there, and they'd been there, some of them had been there that weekend. And it was going to be a glorious day. Mr. Pino, he was sort of known as the camp counselor. What he's been with these families for many years. He was organizing events, and that day he had organized a gathering. The day would start off with a virtual mass for the kids that woke up. Then Mr. Pino had organized a little pickleball gathering, a tournament. After the pickleball tournament, they were going to all convoy by boat to Elliott Key, call it Billy's Point or Coons Point, and they were going to spend several hours enjoying the beautiful weather. And it just happened to be an ideal day for boating. The seas were calm, no wind, no rain. And so after the pickleball tournament finished and all the kids gathered up, Mr. Pino was going to operate the vessel. He was going to captain the Robalo from Ocean Reef and travel the distance to Elliott Key, a voyage he had made many times before. The 29-foot Robalo, a well-built boat, has been in fabrication for decades. It was equipped with twin 300 horsepower engines. The boat actually is rated to handle even larger engines. Mr. Pino had navigated that course many times. The GPS data that you heard the prosecutor tell you about will show that he had navigated that area many times. There were 14 people on board: Mr. Pino, his wife, his daughter, and the daughter's girlfriends. And they navigated from Ocean Reef the distance to Elliott Key and then anchored in that area. Other boats joined the festivities. And you heard that as part of that afternoon, the adults and some of the children were consuming alcohol. And as I alluded to yesterday, there were adults there who had observed Mr. Pino that day, as they had many other times. And the testimony, the evidence in the case will be that Mr. Pino was observed with a beer. He admitted later on he'd had 2 beers. And it's not 2 beers in quotes, as the prosecutor did in her opening statement. That is the evidence. The evidence will show there's not one more beer than 2. Not one more. It was 2 beers over the course of several hours, 2 or 2.5 hours. This was not the first time Mr. Pino and these adults had engaged in these kinds of gatherings in the past. The other adults there, Mr. Suarez, Mr. Pardo, they knew Mr. Pino. They too had enjoyed the afternoon with Mr. Pino. They observed Mr. Pino. All the adults that were there that day were satisfied that Mr. Pino was not impaired. Sometime late that afternoon, Mr. Pino pulls up the anchor of the Robalo, and now it is time to head back to Ocean Reef, because that night they were going to celebrate the birthday, I think at 9 p.m. Contrary to the statement by the prosecutor, Mr. Pino was not nervous or anxious about making sure the girls were IG Instagram ready, as if Mr. Pino was anxious to get the girls back home so they could have enough time to shower. There was plenty of time. Mr. Pino was navigating back to Ocean Reef as he had done many times before. He was not thrill-seeking. He was not speeding. He was not doing donuts. He was not racing any other boat. He was simply going back. He was in essentially an internal autopilot, as he had done many times before. On this one occasion, on this one time, something went wrong. Mr. Pino, according to the state's expert who you will hear testify, somehow lost situational awareness, meaning he must have lost track of the markers along the way, and he elided or crashed into marker number 15. He wasn't intending to do it. He wasn't trying to come as close as possible and see if he could just skim across that channel. This was pure and simple an accident.
Objection to argument, Your Honor.
The evidence will show that Mr. Pino had no intention of putting anyone's life in danger. He wasn't intending to try to come as close to the marker as he possibly could. But on that day, there was no other boat coming at him. It was a clear day, and his destination, Ocean Reef, once that boat would have cleared marker 15, it was wide open bay until Angelfish Creek. That's the next passage that the vessel would need to travel to go back to Ocean Reef. When Mr. Pino alighted with that marker, when he crashed into that marker, the boat eventually capsized. The testimony will show that Mr. Pino himself was knocked unconscious. The testimony will be from those that were there. They thought Mr. Pino was dead. He was on the surface of the boat, bleeding from his head. He had injured his arm. He only came to once the boat eventually capsized completely. He falls into the water. Minutes later, he comes to. Testimony will show that he had suffered a concussion, a traumatic brain injury, and still he was able, with presence of mind, to hold on to that boat. And with a traumatic brain injury, as the testimony will show, he was disoriented. He obviously did not have all of his senses, but he's trying to make sense of what has happened. You will see, if you haven't already, with some of the pictures shown, that the girls and Mrs. Pino are in the water. Soon, another boat came up. David Rodriguez, a good Samaritan, doesn't know the Pino family, happened to be coming northbound. A few minutes later, he arrives, and he observes the scene, and he sees Mr. Pino hanging onto that boat. As you heard and will hear, Lucy was unaccounted for. And Mr. Pino makes an effort to go under the boat and retrieve and locate and find Lucy Fernandez, as she had been trapped under that boat. And it was Mr. Pino who reached under and brought Lucy Fernandez to the surface so that efforts could be made to save her life. Even in the condition he was in, with a brain injury, he made every effort he could, once he was directed, once he was able to get his senses back, to try to save Lucy's life. And so you can imagine the emotional toll that takes on a human being, because we all know that eventually Lucy died. And it was George Pino who tried to save her life by retrieving her from under the boat. His efforts failed. David Rodriguez, the Good Samaritan I was telling you about, called for Mr. Pino to get onto Mr. Rodriguez's boat. And David Rodriguez will testify that he was observing Mr. Pino closely, purposely, As David Rodriguez was wondering, how could this happen? Perhaps David Rodriguez thought this was someone who was impaired. And so David Rodriguez, a man who has nothing to do with the Pino family, a man whose only interest was to help and save lives, looked at Mr. Pino purposely with intent and was convinced, after dealing with Mr. Pino was not impaired. And you will hear his testimony. And this was minutes after the elision. But Mr. Pino, in David Rodriguez's view, and what you'll hear him say, was disoriented. He was in shock, a natural reaction to a crash and a brain injury. Law enforcement, fire rescue came to the scene. Everyone who could be rescued from the water was. And at that time, Mr. Pino was in the custody of 2 Fish and Wildlife Commission officers who were checking him out to make sure he was okay and to find out what happened. You will hear from Lieutenant Thompson, who has training, experience, expertise on the issue of impairment. And he was with Mr. Pino for the next several hours, and he too looked at Mr. Pino purposely and saw that Mr. Pino was not impaired. Officer Hernandez was with Mr. Pino all of that time. He too observed Mr. Pino purposely, smelled him, looked at his eyes. All of these individuals were looking to make sure that Mr. Pino was not impaired, and they concluded he was not impaired. I recognize I'm spending an awful amount of time talking about this issue of impairment. Mr. Pino is not charged with boating under the influence, but when I saw the prosecutor put the 2 beers in quotes, I thought it was important that I spent.
Argument, Your Honor.
I think it's the evidence will show conclusively. I believe there'll be 8 witnesses that will tell you that Mr. Pino was not impaired. And so Mr. Pino is questioned about what happened. Lieutenant Thompson, who's wearing one of those body cams, is trying to figure out what happened. Of course, make sure that everybody receives medical attention right away. And you will see Mr. Pino on video. So you'll be able to look at Mr. Pino in real time with your own eyes. You will be able to look at Mr. Pino purposely with the scrutiny that you should give it to see that Mr. Pino was not impaired. And he was questioned about what had happened. And even though he was not alcohol impaired, he was still suffering from a traumatic brain injury. At some point that night, he had to receive medical attention, and you will see that his head was bandaged up. He was eventually taken to a hospital to be treated. But even with his head bandaged up, he was being questioned, and he was trying to recall what had happened. How did this accident happen? And he explained as best as he could, under those circumstances, what he recalled. And you will find out that Mr. Pino's recollection of that event was affected by the concussion he sustained, that he was relaying details that could not be accurate. For example, what kind of engine do you have on your boat, Mr. Pino? And he told the officer, twin 225s. Actually, Mr. Pino has twin 300s. He did have a boat that had twin 225s. His prior boat had twin 225 horsepower engines. But he reported that this boat had twin 225s. Obviously, his memory or his brain was not functioning in a way that it would ordinarily function had he not sustained a concussion. He reported that he had gone under the boat to rescue Nati, a different girl, We know it was Lucy. And we know that Mr. Pino has known Lucy all of his life. And yet when he was reporting who he had rescued under the boat, he reported that it was Nati, another girl on the boat. He had innocently but mistakenly confused who it was he had retrieved from under the vessel. He was asked to prepare, as best he could, a seating chart of where the various passengers were seated. And when he prepared that seating chart, he had the passengers in locations different than what it turns out to be. He also was recalling that there was a big wave that had come from another boat in the distance, and that the wave had caused him to lose control of the steering wheel. Photographs and other testimony suggest that there was no other boat that day, and that Mr. Pino's memory may not have been accurate. We cannot prove, we don't know if there in fact was another boat out there that may have thrown a wake from a distance, a wave, but we can't establish it for certain. And so it appears that Mr. Pino's memory of how that accident happened cannot be relied upon given his traumatic brain injury. And we will present testimony from a doctor who has examined the records, who will confirm that in fact Mr. Pino, given the circumstances, did suffer from a traumatic brain injury that would result in what the professionals call false memories, memories that the person believed to be true but are not accurate. When you get clocked, when you get hit over the head and you lose your memory, the memories that come back of the event, sort of like an amnesia, and your brain trying to make sense of things, puts together old memories with new memories, and that memory they call confabulation. You'll hear testimony about that. And I share that with you because when Mr. Pino was trying to make sense of what happened, when the officer was interviewing him to try to figure out how did the crash happen, Mr. Pino was reporting what his memory, faulty as it was, of that few minutes and few seconds before the elision. We do have the benefit of the global position satellite machine that was on Mr. Pino's boat. There were actually two of them. And what they show, Mr. Pino driving very much on a steady course that day and during that return trip from Billy's Point back to Ocean Reef. There's no evidence he was zigzagging or hot dogging or thrill seeking. What the evidence will show is that as he was going through the channel, when there were markers left for him to clear before it was wide open bay to Angelfish Creek, at some point Mr. Pino's boat, the Robalo, starts making a turn or a veer in the direction of Angelfish Creek. And you'll see there was a red marker on his right, and then there's the green marker 15 in the distance. And 9 seconds later, Mr. Pino's Robalo crashes into that boat, into that post, or into that pilot. The state's theory, that I believe the expert will advance, is that Mr. Pino lost situational awareness. He should have seen it. It was right there in front of him, and he didn't see it, because we know he wasn't trying to hit it. So I think what the evidence will show, even by the state's own theory, is that Mr. Pino did not intend to hit the marker. He lost situational awareness. That's their theory. That for those 9 seconds, he didn't look ahead to see that there was a marker in front of him. Now, the GPS, interestingly, you heard the prosecutor say the GPS is not biased. It is not subject to money, privilege, or power, I think was the words that the prosecutor used.
Judge, objection to argument.
No argument, counsel, what the evidence is.
Interestingly enough, though, the GPS is not perfect either. you'll see that the GPS records data. What it does is it simply records points in time as the boat is moving, and then it does computations. This GPS, as their own expert will show, sometimes makes what I'll just describe as errors, computational errors. In one instance, it registers at some point in time the boat is traveling at 77 miles an hour, but the expert knows that that's not possible. The boat can't achieve that. The GPS is making an error. The GPS will show a boat traveling over land when we know the boat is not traveling over land. It's fallible. And to the point of this case, the GPS on Mr. Pino's boat, which tracks where the boat went according to the global position satellite, the track on the GPS data that you will see actually shows that the marker 15, the one where the accident happened, is not exactly where it is in the real world. On the GPS device in Mr. Pino's boat, the marker is many feet away, up to 15 feet away from where it really is on the planet Earth. And so the track that you will see, if you look at the track, it would appear that Mr. Pino's boat, the Robalo, never actually alighted with the marker. But we know it did. And that's not the product of some intentional mistake by anybody, but the marker on the GPS, Mr. Pino's Robalo, is not exactly where it is on the planet Earth. Now, the GPS is not a witness to anything. You will hear from the people that were actually on the scene. And so I've described for you what you will hear from the people at the sandbar, the people who came to the aid of the passengers, Mr. Rodriguez, law enforcement who came to aid, and you'll hear from them. The GPS will tell us some very important things, but it won't answer the question that you will have to answer. Was Mr. Pino reckless? And I submit to you what the evidence will show is that Mr. Pino was human. He was human. And that something happened that we may never know. No one will be able to say why he was distracted in those last few seconds, where 9 seconds or however many seconds it was, and did not appreciate that the boat was going to collide with the marker. Had he seen it, we know he would have turned. Nobody's suggesting he wanted to hit it. The state's suggestion that it was speed, that's not a factor. You'll hear that there was 9 full seconds, 2 football fields between the time the boat started veering towards Ocean Reef, towards Angelfish Creek with that marker in the middle, 9 full seconds. At any point in time, if Mr. Pino realized, oops, we're headed towards the marker, all it would have taken was a slight turn of the wheel, and none of us would be here. And the state's theory is his failure to turn the wheel should bring him into a criminal courtroom. Now, you heard the prosecutor talk about interrogatories and a civil lawsuit that was filed against Mr. Pino. That is not what we are here for. You've heard the prosecutor talk about accountability. This is not a case of...
Judge, objection to argument. This is closing.
I'll overrule on that about what the evidence will be.
Okay. So you've heard, in terms of accountability, that compensation is dealt with separate from here. That was what the prosecutor brought to your attention. That's not what we're here for. That's resolved totally separately. What we're here to resolve is whether the state proves that Mr. Pino, that day, that time, in those 9 seconds, as they would say, was acting recklessly because he was traveling on his boat, surrounded by his loved ones, wanting to go back to where they started the day to celebrate his daughter's birthday. The state will feature photographs of visuals of that day. For example, I expect they're going to show you that Mr. Pino's boat was carrying all the empty glassware and cans from the beverages, including the alcohol beverages that were consumed that day. Mr. Pino's boat, his wife will tell you, she took the responsibility of gathering all the empty bottles, all the empty cans, all the trash, to make sure it was disposed of properly and not left out at Elliott Key. And so when you see those bottles and you see those cans, you'll understand that Mrs. Pino and Mr. Pino were acting in a way that you would expect people to act when they've gathered together for a day of recreating at Elliott Key. Don't leave your trash behind. You may see very difficult pictures of the events, and of course they're going to be difficult to watch. It's going to spark emotion among all of us. But that evidence will not answer the question of whether the state is proving that Mr. Pino acted recklessly, whether he acted with culpable negligence, intentionally, knowingly, purposely, consciously, indifferent to the consequences, that when he was traveling at 47 miles per hour in the wide open bay with one marker to go and plenty of space, whether if he looked at his speedometer and saw it was going 47 miles an hour, he should have said to himself, wow, this is really a dangerous speed. When the Robalo boat is built to handle even much more speed than that, all of the passengers were seated. There were the right number of life preservers on the boat. He didn't have a kill switch on. It's not required by law. And so to the extent that you'll hear evidence of other features of a boat or other safety features that can be employed, we're not here to decide policy of whether we should require safety switches, kill switches. And given that you know that in that channel there is no posted speed restrictions at all, not then, not now, the evidence will show that the speed at which Mr. Pino was traveling was perfectly appropriate given the conditions of that day. Calm waters, no wind, no rain, no lightning, no busy boat traffic. But even so, somebody died. Even so, somebody died. Mr. Pino will have to live with that.
So objection to argument.
No argument, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, this is opening statement. Lawyers advise what they believe the evidence will show. Thank you.
Let me say he wasn't texting, he wasn't on the cell phone, but he was the operator of that boat. At the end of the day, it was on him. It was on him to get those girls back to Ocean Reef safely. That was on him. He accepted that responsibility and it was on him. But the law, as it will be instructed, I submit to you, tells you that even when we fail as humans,
Objection to argument, Your Honor.
Counsel?
even though Mr. Pino may have failed as a human to avoid this tragedy,
Can we go sidebar?
Counsel? There's no argument.
the evidence will show that this tragedy was not caused by reckless and culpably negligent behavior. At worst, he was human and he committed human error. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. State, the first witness.
Your Honor, I think the court said we were going to take a momentary break before the first witness. motorcycle?